God, the ending of this series sucked. Hi, I'm the Unqualified Reviewer. Please subscribe and like so that one day I might learn how to make a good intro. Today, I wanted to talk about a book series called Amulet. If you haven't read the Amulet books, don't worry. They're not worth reading. That statement really hurts to say because this had to be my favorite comic book series for a very long time. So today, let's talk about the meteoric rise and fall of Amulet's main villain, Ikol. First, spoilers ahead, but again, this series had a heart attack and died after book 8, and the author dragged its now decaying and whimsyless corpse for one more book that ruined what came before it. First, I would say that Ikol's design is fantastic, and it is the one thing that is consistently brilliant throughout the series. Actually, his design improves as he shifts from a tertiary antagonist to a primary one. His final form that incorporates the shadows is so cool. So, yeah, I love his design. It's simple and uncanny and terrifying and just really awesome. So, what made me come to despise Ikol? Well, in order to understand that, we must first understand what makes Ikol such a special villain. And Ikol's brilliance comes from his mystique. Ikol is a truly unknowable entity for the first 8 books. He's clearly a puppet master, but you aren't initially sure of his true intentions. However, you realize that what he essentially is looking for is very simple. He wants control. He feeds off the weakness of the stone bearers, promising them power, but then turning on them and manipulating them. When Ikol is first encountered, he is not in a physical form, but rather just a voice in Emily, the main character's head. From the very beginning, you get the slight undertones that something is wrong with Ikol. Even though it helps her at the first chance it implores her to destroy her adversaries, pushing her to take the most extreme of actions. It never forces, though, only suggests. It amplifies the negative emotions of the wearer and pushes them further and further each time the power of the stone is used. Then we get to see what happens when a stone keeper gives in to the voice of Ikol. We see this in the story of the Elf King, a character who I will touch on more in a little bit. When someone submits to the stone, their bodies break and twist, becoming bestial monstrosities. The Elf King was one such being who lost control to the stone. Again, more on him a little later. But back to why Ikol is brilliant. It takes us 3 whole books to get to see Ikol, so this builds up an immense amount of tension. But the author also chooses to show his reveal in a very interesting way. Instead of some bombastic entrance, he just appears in a dream. And this only increases the sense of terror you get from Ikol. He doesn't need fanfare. His presence is enough. So when he just appears without any, acknowledgement, it's much more terrifying than if there had been a long built-up scene to his reveal. Okay, I'm not going to talk about every single interaction that Emily has with Ikol because I don't want to. But I do want to highlight the way Ikol interacts with the story of some characters before I talk about how the final 2 books took Ikol out to the proverbial gravel pit with shows like Attack on Titan or Marriage Toxin. The character that I want to highlight in relation to Ikol is Max. Max is an interesting villain. He gaslights and manipulates everyone around him, all in order to get revenge on humans after his childhood friend, who was an elf, was killed right in front of him. In order to live out his vengeance, Max makes a deal with Ikol. Servitude to Ikol in exchange for the power needed to carry out his revenge. Max's desperation and desire for vengeance, however, slowly falls away as he realizes death would have been a kinder fate than the forced subjugation to this mad god, Ikol. Also, I don't think I actually included this in the script, but Ikol is Loki spelled backwards, which is not important, but really cool. Ikol does not let Max die, instead forcing his body back into shape when he is wounded, in a scene that was very disturbing for a younger viewer back in the day. This is when we get to see the true cruelty of Ikol. And we get to see this in the one moment from this comic that scared the ever-loving Jesus out of me as a child. See, Max realizes his folly in teaming up with Ikol. So he tries to team up with Emily to destroy Ikol, at which point Ikol reveals his true colors and throws away what has now become useless to him. He allows Max's body to return to its original state, as in what would have happened if Ikol had never intervened in his life. Ikol throws away what is no longer useful to him, a masterful manipulator with plenty of mystery left to uncover, a figure who whispers but still commands total control. That's where I was at the end of the fantastic 7th book. But too bad, I was hoodwinked. I got complacent, believing that this time things would be different. This time, a mysterious villain wouldn't be ruined by their eventual reveal. So saddle up, cowboy. I'm breaking down every interaction with Ikol in these last 2 books to serve as a cautionary tale. The interactions with Ikol in the 8th book are actually brilliant, as Ikol still remains a mystery. And there are some deeply philosophical scenes that create even more interesting questions in the 8th book. This, of course, only serves to make his eventual failure even more disappointing. In the 8th book, he starts again by tempting Emily to join him so that they can use the power of the stones. Emily refuses and flees to meet a future version of herself. After young Emily flees, Ikol confronts the older version of Emily. Ikol asks the older version of Emily what she has done, and Emily says she's acted with conviction. Ikol says that the young Emily will fail, like she always does, alluding to the fact that this moment in time has occurred before, as this entire scenario is happening in this limbo dreamscape thing called the Void. He and old Emily do battle, and Ikol kills old Emily, leading to an extremely bleak but downright intriguing suggestion that Ikol has been killing Emily inside of this dreamscape for an indeterminate amount of time. Then we get one of my favorite scenes in this entire series, the unmasking of the Elf King. So, time for a little bit of exposition. Why am I putting exposition out what feels like a major breakthrough of what could be happening? Because that's exactly what the book does. Keeping with the idea, I will also be explaining the Elf King in a disjointed manner that seems to contradict itself. So buckle up. The Elf King was a stone bearer who fell to Ikol's power and has since been living as a puppet, essentially serving out Ikol's design. And when his mask is eventually torn away, you can see that his face has been twisted to match Ikol's in a kind of stupid looking design, but cool implication, lore-wise. The Elf King has been working with a bunch of extraplanetary creatures called shadows as a way to attain a perfect world. Ikol is the Elf King, and despite initially seeming to be against the shadows, he is, of course, ultimately on their side. Ikol has been using the Elf King in tandem with the shadows, all in the means of creating an apocalypse. The question remains, why? Why does Ikol want to end the world? Why does he want to create this interspecies war that will end with this planet being destroyed? Using the shadows to manipulate the elves, to fight the humans, to eat the fly. I don't know why he's followed a fly. That was really dumb. Sorry. We finally get our answer to why Ikol wants to do it in the final book. So let's break down those final scenes with Ikol. In the final confrontation with Ikol, Emily is brought to the master of Ikol, but actually finds out that it was a trap. Ikol reveals that he's been doing all these things for the sake of chaos. Emily tries to fight back, but she is too weak. All the stone bearers come together to battle Ikol, but they are too weak, and in the end, the stone keepers have to sacrifice themselves to kill Ikol by destroying their stones. Emily faces her fear and does what her grandfather, Silas, could not, and faces Ikol, sacrificing herself and ending the threat of the shadows. Mr. Reviewer, that sounds really cool, but why are there no pictures? Well, friend, because I made all of that up. Because the real answer is so much dumber. The actual master that Ikol serves is humans from Earth, or these little robots, because Ikol is an AI. Yes, the eldritch entity that you've been enjoying reading about and wondering what it is for this entire book series was an artificial intelligence. Ikol was trying to extinguish all life on planets so that individuals on Earth could move to a new planet. And I think that's because we destroyed our world through climate change or something. And if you can't see how dumb this is, please give me whatever you are using, because I would like that. Emily then just powers down Ikol, and that's the end of Ikol. So let's break down why this is just the dumbest thing that I've ever read. First, the timeline for this makes absolutely no sense. The stones have been around for hundreds of years, I think, and the people were corrupted by Ikol a long time before Silas, Emily's grandfather, went to these worlds, but it's revealed that Ikol was created by Silas, so presumably it had to be an alternate reality Silas that made Ikol, so okay, but why? This also would make Silas an absolute monster. Ikol, in conjunction with the shadows, had purged countless worlds in an effort to create a new homeworld for humanity, presumably leading to the death of billions, if not trillions. And this would make Silas complicit in planetary, if not stellar genocide. And this would go flying in the face of how Silas is perceived in the book as a hero who, saved a bunch of people and stuff. And the second big issue is just how anticlimactic it is. The fact that Ikol is just an AI spits in the face of those who started reading the Amulet books for their cool steampunk fantasy theme. It's such a weird sci-fi twist that it's just awful. Also, the fact that there's no final fight with Ikol just feels very frustrating. This whole reveal just feels somehow unoriginal. It feels like it's trying to give some deep message about human nature, but it just doesn't. And then there's one last thing that makes me even more frustrated. Because after all this, Ikol doesn't get destroyed. It's revealed that Ikol is still alive, and Vigo, one of the best characters in the series, has to sacrifice himself to stave off Ikol. So you don't even get any closure. The extreme disappointment of this entire ending ruined the book series for me. It took mystique and just spat in its face. I think what should have happened is that Ikol was Silas, Emily's grandfather. Like, somehow through timeline shenanigans, Silas became corrupted and blah, blah, blah. And then Vigo sacrifices himself to save Emily as Emily is losing a battle against corrupted Silas. But I guess I'm just not allowed to have nice things. Anyway, yeah, it's so frustrating. This is my message to authors everywhere. Make sure your review makes sense, please. Thank you. If you like the video, please like and sub. Please comment. I really want to get to 500 subs by the end of the year. It'd mean a whole lot to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like always, peace.